Good afternoon, everybody. It is great to have you here with us this afternoon. And I'm delighted to be today sitting here at Kwandwe Private Game Reserve. Some of you might have seen my social media post this afternoon, where I've decided to do a road trip. So this year has given us lemons. So we're deciding with my children to make lemonade out of it. And we're making the best out of what has been a rather bad situation. I've taken the kids out of school, and we are spending at least 3 months traveling around our very beautiful South Africa. I've got into the car, we've driven 10 hours with an overnight stop on the way here. And we are absolutely delighted to be staying at Kwandwe. And I've been extremely fortunate in all the 10 years that I've worked at Kwandwe. I've never had a chance to stay at Uplands Villa. And now that there's nobody else here, there's actually availability at Uplands. So the kids and I are staying here. And we've been here for almost a week and been doing the most amazing participation experiences with Angus and Graham and the team. Last week, we were involved in a cheetah darting, and we were in a process of moving a male cheetah into a boma area to create a coalition with another male cheetah. And tomorrow morning, I've just got a message now from Angus to say we're going to go and get involved in some rhino and sable relocations as well. So it is absolutely wonderful to be here. And I think when things like this happen, it's so good just to have a different outlook on life. And this has really taught me so much. And I think the biggest thing about being here as well has just been a different environment. It has been so restorative for my soul and for my children as well. And I've absolutely loved being back out in the bush. It is the most extraordinary experience, that sense of space, that sense of peace. And I think that's why we need to get back to start selling safaris. We need people that have been in these busy, built up cities full of stress and anxiety to get back out into Africa and find that sense of themselves again, and that sense of true identity with who you are, and a time to connect with your family and your loved ones in a less stressful environment. So I'm very excited in that sense to be able to share the updates we have now from Tanzania, which is one of the first countries within Africa that is truly opening up to tourism. So as Tanzania opens up to tourism, and there are still loads of questions around what is going on, there seems to be a little bit of a black zone around the actual protocols within Tanzania. I have a very esteemed panel today who are going to be hopefully putting some of those questions to bed and giving you assurance that you can book with confidence. So there's lots of conversation still around air access, but we are seeing the signs of travel resuming, which is extremely positive. Today, earlier, you might have received as well our COVID comment that went out, and we have a timeline that we shared within that comment, which showed which of our members are opening up at what stage. And as I did that timeline, I was absolutely delighted to see the number of places that are opening up and getting ready for guests now from July as well. So I think we just need to sort of reignite this energy of travel, and we need to blow on those embers and get this fire and this for safaris going again. So we need to get this engine burning, definitely. This afternoon, as I mentioned, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome the panel of 3 well-known, highly respected and widely trusted companies in Tanzania. 2 of them are our members, Legendary Expeditions and Chem Safaris, and together with our partner, Nomad Tanzania. The 3 companies have been collaborating, and we are seeing greater strategic cooperation as they are selecting which camps to open in which areas, which facilitates stronger itinerary building. And so we don't have an oversupply of beds in one area, and we rather have a good spread that gives you the option to use more of the country within a good itinerary experience. Between Legendary, Chem, and Nomad, they have a complementary circuit, and they also have the same approach to their camp procedures and guest experiences, which makes them a highly compatible circuit to be using. They also share some of the framework of bookings, terms and conditions. This is one of the questions that we got before the panel started about our booking terms and conditions. We'll go into that a little bit later. But before this conversation, before this panel, weeks and weeks ago, we have spoken to each other, and all of us have agreed to work within the same framework of booking terms and conditions going forward, in terms of deposit policies, final payment dates, and the cancellation policies as well, and what happens when there is a COVID situation taking place and how the guest will be refunded for that. So I'd just like to then introduce our panel to you. And the first person I have is Shannon Naidoo, who is the lodge manager at Little Chem. I'm delighted that Shannon's actually joining us from on the ground, and she has been the person preparing Little Chem for the opening, which is taking place within a few weeks' time. So welcome, Shannon. We're delighted to have you here today and really looking forward to your inputs on things. And then we have Sean Clark, who is the Director of Sales and Marketing for Legendary Expeditions. Sean is based in Cape Town. It's been absolutely fantastic having Sean there because generally I'm based in Cape Town as well. And having that collaborative approach of working with Sean and building a stronger and new narrative around Legendary is very exciting. And we have some very exciting things to be showing you and sharing with you in the coming future. So I'm welcoming to Sean as well. And then we have Petra Mayer, who is the head of safari operations from Nomad, Tanzania. And Petra, we're delighted to have you here today as a really good, strong voice as to what's happening in Tanzania and be able to answer some of the tricky questions we hope as well. And I know you've been dealing with agents all over the world, guests and agents. So it's wonderful to have you on us over here today. So what I'm just going to do as a quick summary, and I know everybody listening, generally I saw the list of attendees before this talk, have a good experience, good knowledge of Tanzania, but I always maintain a map is absolutely fantastic and you can't go wrong with showing people where everything is. So as a start with Legendary Expeditions, we know we have Legendary Lodge based here in Arusha, and then down in the Mwiba Wildlife Reserve, we have Mwiba Lodge and the new Mila Tented Camp, which we'll give you some little pictures on a little bit later. And then we have the Legendary Serengeti Camps, which are the 2 mobile camps which operate across 4 different locations within the Serengeti. And then we have Chem Safaris, where we've got Little Chem, Forest Chem, and Chem Lodge between the Tarangire and Lake Manyara, comprising of that very important corridor that links the Tarangire into the Manyara National Park. And we have Nomad, Tanzania, where they've got Kuru Camp here in the Tarangire area, Intimanu in the Ngorongoro Crater and Intimanu Private. And then up in the northern Serengeti, they have, I've got to list all these camps here. Lamai Serengeti and the private, Mukombi House, Serengeti and the Serengeti Safari Camp. And then going into the western section, I've never been here, I have to admit that. And I have an absolute dream and desire, I'm going to say it openly, I've always wanted to go to Greystoke Mahale. So there's Greystoke Mahale right on Lake Tanganyika. And then we have the Katavi camps in the Katavi area. There is Kigilia Ruaha in Ruaha, another fantastic park which I've always wanted to go to. And then the Selous, which I do know relatively well, where they have Sand River Selous, Kiba Point, and they have the Sand River Selous fly camping as well. So that gives you an idea of what we're discussing today, the types of, the variety of camps we have. And then just to show you now, in phase 1 of opening, which is going to be now July into August, which of these camps are open, we show that some of those disappear. So the whole west has disappeared over here, and we've retained the northern circuit and the Selous with Legendary Lodge, Little Chem on the Chem side, Lamai, Intimanu, Kuru, and Selous from the Nomad side of things. So great. The first question we're going to get into this afternoon is, sorry, I just want to say before I go into all the questions, to all the participants, because I'm in the screen share mode, I cannot see any of your questions on the side. So any comment that is being made is either going to be read by our panelists, or I do have Cara, who's my ghost host this afternoon as well, who will be reading some of the questions, and they're going to be WhatsApping me if I need to be asking anything, or Cara might just appear as a ghost appearance as well. So the first sort of thing I wanted to do is speak about the questions that have been raised extensively is, what does the new safari experience look like? How are things changing in the camps? And Shannon, I'm going to ask you to address this first, as you've been preparing Little Chem for guests to come in. What are you doing? How do the camp experiences look? And then while everybody's getting rather anxious, I can just feel my attendees getting anxious about this question. Before they get to the camp, we will answer the questions about how they're going to arrive in Tanzania and all the questions around the airport and the security generally on that side of things. So, but Shannon, give us some good news first about what's happening in the camps and what it's going to look like in the next few weeks.
Oh, you know, we have been working tirelessly for the past few weeks getting the camp ready. It's been an amazing energy with everyone, you know, having some motivation to work towards in the midst of all this uncertainty and unhappiness with Corona. Um, so, you know, camp is looking amazing. The only difference is, you know, nothing is going away from the guest experience. We're going to be having obviously, a lot of hand sanitizer everywhere. People are going to be wearing masks. Our staff will be wearing masks. The guests will be wearing masks. It will be very much the same little Chem, but just added on. Yeah.
Fantastic. And while we stop looking at that, I was going to say over here, John, from that point of view, Petra, in terms of arriving into Tanzania, which is one of the big questions that we've had from multiple people, what does that look like? And how can we assure guests about what is actually going on in the ground in Tanzania? There's a lot of things about fake news, not reporting at all about what's really going on in the country in terms of the COVID cases. So let's just hit that one right on the head. And if you could give us an update on that, that would be great.
Yeah, basically it's going to look similar to any travel in Europe. There's very thorough screening on arrival with temperature checks and symptoms, and clients have to fill in their travel history, which will be kept logged with the authorities for any tracing that might be needed. There's lots of hand sanitizing and as much as possible handling without, you know, like online visas are encouraged, just to avoid extra handling. That's the same guideline as everywhere, really. Once you arrive and you have symptoms, there's a team that has tests ready, just in case there is somebody arriving with tests. And that person will then be extra screened and possibly has to quarantine after checking how the situation is, hopefully at a property of their choice, at a private property, obviously. So these are all things that are currently still being established, but this is what we are currently working towards with the information that we have from the government. And so it's pretty much the same as in any destination with that. There is extra hygiene measures on every transfer car that will be used. The standard operating procedures are in place. Everybody's wearing masks when you get closer to people. Otherwise you have your minimum distance you keep. And then you check into the first lodge and you'll be handed over to the people there. So I think it's more or less quite seamless how these health checks are being screened on the ground in every destination. So obviously then you will have a further check on arrival in the hotel, which is also mandatory. So you have continuous checks as you go through, which is actually more checking than if you were going to a holiday in Spain, I suppose.
But I have to just say, I'm being a bit of a devil's advocate here. Africa is the deepest, darkest, and blackest of holes within the travel sphere of things. And no matter what happens, Africa is the most frightening destination. So I think people are more likely to go to Italy and have a fantastic holiday and not question a COVID policy than they want to do to come to Africa on this side. And we have to think, and I have to ask you as the panelists, do you think that Tanzania is really ready for tourism? Or do you think we're in complete denial that COVID actually exists and they've played some sort of, they pretended it was around, they've done the right thing, and now they're just opening up and getting on with it? So where do you think we stand within that? Sean, I'd like to maybe ask you that question. So is Tanzania ready or is Tanzania in denial?
You know, Suzanne, I think it's a bit of both, to be honest with you. I think the lack of information, I think that's what is on a lot of people's minds. That's coming from the destination. But at the same time, I feel there's almost a sentiment that we've moved past a fear aspect and we've moved towards a very pragmatic approach to receiving guests. So I think that's really, certainly in the last couple of weeks, that's been my experience. It's a case of, okay, well, COVID is what it is here. But at the same time, our lives can't stop and we've got to find ways to to kind of navigate through this uncertainty as best as possible. So certainly on the ground, in terms of the properties, all the conversation has been had in terms of how do we make the best out of this? How do we maximize the guest experience without taking too much away from it? And how do we calm people? How do we get them to experience what we know they can experience after having been cooped up in 4 walls for the better part of 4 or 5 months? So yeah, I mean, as I said, there's going to be certainly your travelers that are going to be more risk averse. And I get asked the question quite often, like, is it ready? Well, it depends on your kind of traveler, really. I mean, if you're going to be really risk orientated, you're probably not going to end up traveling too much. But there's certainly a lot of people that I've encountered who have got clients that saying, hey, listen, if the borders are open, they're coming. They'll deal with it. They've almost taken a self-reliance approach to everything and said, listen, I'm going to be as good as I can be in terms of my health and my safety, but I don't want this to affect my livelihood or that of our families, because there's a very big emotional and psychological element that's at play here too. So yeah, I suppose a bit of both, really.
Fantastic. No, I agree with that. So Shannon, can I just ask you, since you're on the ground, okay, are you going out? What's happening? What is really going on the ground in terms of the COVID cases? What do people feel? I mean, it's been, for me, I just have to say, having left my little bubble in Franschhoek, and we've started coming, I've gone out into the big wide world and drove all this direction to get to Kwandwe. And I passed through Uniondale at a COVID compliant guest house. I found it quite hysterical that nobody in this part of the world actually realizes that COVID exists. They're also thinking this is a waste of time. Let's get on with it. But then saying that was generally driving here, and then getting into Kwandwe, there was a sense of, well, we are in our little self-isolated bubble. They've not let anybody else in here. This is a completely protected zone. So somebody coming in thinking, ooh, somebody new is in our space. So what is happening on the ground? How do your staff feel about things? What is the feeling with the team? And just generally life within that area? And you're in quite a rural part, of course, of Tanzania as well.
Yes, exactly what you said about being in a bubble. We sometimes forget everything that's going on, which is a good thing. Especially if you're escaping little Chempton, you really do want to forget about the outside world. But obviously, we do have to face reality and understand what's going on outside. But the staff are being very good about it. We're conducting a lot of training, obviously, because communication both with the staff and with the guests is crucial at this point. Making everyone feel comfortable to be executing their jobs properly in a more sensible and calm way towards the coronavirus. And it's just, we are preparing for it, and I have a good feeling about the stuff. Everyone's on board and everyone's being safe.
That's fantastic to hear, really fantastic. So Petra, from your side, in terms of your Nomad camps, what is the feeling on that? What are the staff, what protocols are being taken from a staff point of view in the camps, not just for the guests? No, you're on mute, sorry.
Oh, no.
Sorry. There's a lot of training going in right now with our camp managers and teams on the ground. Obviously, with the remoteness, that's also quite fun, but we're quite used to that. So they are doing an incredible job right now to get the areas ready after obviously quite intensive rains we had this year, and they are very busy opening up our surroundings. And on the training on the ground, we have all the protocols that the managers are now putting into place with training the staff, from the welcome, from the handling of the rooms, individual items that are not being shared anymore. So it's quite an intensive, detailed process. On the other hand, there is quite a lot of it part of the normal procedure anyway. For example, if you arrive in camp, you're always greeted with a lovely smelling towel to freshen yourself up. So now we just wash our hands. So it's a similar thing. It's just slightly amended to what is required. The same thing, the cars are being...
Spray somebody down with some medicated, some Dettol smelling.
A bit of lavender on it, or ginger, yeah. The cars are being cleaned every day, so we just add a bit of disinfectant to it. So it is processes that we have in place. They just have to be adapted, like we all adapted over the last 3 months So we just have to do the extra measures that are required now. And that is a process that takes a bit of time. And like you say, you entered the bubble of Kwambwe. I think that will be a little bit the case everywhere right now, where people have been sort of, we quarantine our staff before they go into camp, and anybody who comes in, obviously, we will take the extra measures. You don't get that close to clients. You have your distances you keep. And therefore you keep your safety like we do here in our everyday life out of the bush. And it's going to be an adaptation process. Obviously, if you have families traveling, they're together in the car. You don't have to have that distance. We're trying to encourage the private activities as much as possible, obviously. So these distances can be kept. The dinners and food arrangements are amended to, get away from buffets. We always have quite wholesome camp food anyway. So you have your serving dishes on your private table. You might miss the communications around the captain's table at night, which is usually the big thing on safari. So that's the one that we might have spaced out around the campfire instead. So small adjustments like that to be able to keep the social distancing.
Great, thank you. I think just the feeling that I'm getting from the questions from the attendees and the things that are coming through on my WhatsApp here, which is the other questions as well, is that there's a generally a strong level of confidence in us as individual brands about how we're going to be delivering our COVID experiences, and we've all got our protocols in place. We're still working. We're almost finishing on the Legendary side. What's happening with their protocols and the nice little infographic happening over there, but. Just two questions I would like to go back to is the one question is coming from Emil saying, is the Tanzanian government lobbying key source markets to lift negative travel advisories? And what are we going to be doing on that side about the travel advisories? That might be our biggest barrier, despite the industry on the ground being ready for business. And the other one, which Al Kilpin has said over here, and Petra, you mentioned that you were talking about it, is the situation of when quarantine does need to take place, whether the client can go into a choice of their own destination versus a government hospital. So does anybody have any feedback on those two questions within the panel?
I know that our tourism minister has engaged with a number of ambassadors currently in Tanzania to discuss the measures that we need to take to get some of those travel advisories softened or lifted. So that's work in progress, but I guess that's we'll have to see how that develops. I know there's very active engagement right now on that higher level, and so let's hope that there will be overall a more positive approach to that that will obviously have the impact on travel insurances and everything.
Great. Okay. So I want to move on to the next sort of question that I have, which is about the experiences. Everybody is coming to Tanzania or on safari and wanting to have that safari experience. And I have the complete heebie-jeebies about seeing any photograph of our family on a game viewing vehicle all wearing face masks. I really have to get my head around that one. And even here while I'm at Kwambwe with my children, getting them to wear a face mask is like complete nightmare, by the way. But they do have a buff on. And when we're about to see somebody and they're going to go on a game drive, I say, put the buff on, cover your mouth. But what is the protocol? And I'd like to know, what are we going to be doing about experiences? What do the experiences look like from a safari point of view? And very importantly, from Shannon, in terms of Chem, what we're doing with our school visits and our Maasai experiences. Sean, really very critical, which I feel quite strongly about. What are we doing about the Tatoga and the Hadza? These are communities that are completely unaffected by something like COVID. How do we respect and act with these people responsibly? And Petra, earlier questions came up in terms of what's happening on the chimp side. And we've been dealing with a lot of the IUCN Great Ape Protocol, which I don't know whether I'm sure that included the chimps experiences as well, but there has been, just everybody knows, quite a lot of discussion with the IUCN about new protocols with great apes. And that covers all experiences across the world in terms of that. But Sean, I think I'm going to hand that question over to you, and then it's going to go to Shannon in terms of what the experiences are looking like. And I've had lots of questions coming in here, which actually does make me giggle. From Bernie at here in South Africa, and Julian Asher and Anita Campbell saying, do the guests have to wear a face mask on a safari? And do they need to wear a face mask in an open air camp when there's lots of social distancing? So what is this protocol on face masks and how are we going to get around it? So let's discuss the face mask and then let's look at our experiences in terms of communities as well. So Sean, over to you.
You're right. Yeah, no, listen, I think I'm with you, Suzanne, in terms of the face mask thing. I think there's nothing more off-putting than having a whole bunch of people around with face masks on it. I think the reality, though, is that, like I said earlier, I think we're wanting to still maintain the guest experience as much as possible. So certainly from our perspective, in terms of what we can control, our staff will be wearing face masks, right up to the GM or the lodge managers, right down to the ground. And I think that's something that we can control, because that's also, it's not just about the guests, it's obviously about the staff and their well-being at the same time. So I think that will certainly stand us in good stead. We've made the option for guests to wear masks in public areas optional. We do suggest that they wear them, but I don't think that we can put it as a hard and fast approach to them to wear it, because they're paying for the vacation. And if they're going to be able to social distance, whether it's around the pool or throughout the property, then that can be in their hands. When it comes down to experiences, and again, same thing with the cultural side of things, is that the well-being of the tribes, especially the Hadzabe and the Datoga, in our instance, are paramount. So we're going to be suspending the cultural activities for the time being. And I think it's like everything. I think it's a continual assessment that's going to happen over the course of the next couple of months, and see how the virus goes about, and see how things happen. But yeah, I think the worst thing that could possibly happen, and this is true from the cultural experience, is that you don't want to go and infect these tribes by Westerners coming in and giving them the virus. So I think that that's certainly something that we're going to be suspending. But in terms of the overall experience, when you talk about the other activities, and we know that all of our properties and everything that we offer, whether it's Nomad, Chem, or Legendary, is very centered around those experiences. And we're fortunate, I know Chem from their side of things as well, we offer the private guides and private vehicles for every booking. So it's not like you're going to be on a vehicle with someone else that you don't need to. You've got the complete flexibility to be able to curate those experiences as much as you want to. So that's an automatic safety measure in place there that we've then got. So yeah, I mean, whether it's the night drives, the walking, or the fly camping, you can really still experience it the way it has always been experienced. And I think probably the only exception would be the cultural experiences for the time being.
Yeah, and just anything different that you're going to be doing in terms of experiences? I mean, about fly camping, more, focus on a slightly different things, or what's going to happen on that side?
Yeah, I mean, Legendary's always been renowned for the fact that we've always gone over and above in terms of the experiential, that adventurous spirit, just based on the sheer tracts of land that we're able to access. So yeah, I think fly camping is something that I think will come into effect quite strongly in the drier months now, because I mean, it is such an exclusive experience that we've got. But having said that, the other properties, whether it's the legendary Serengeti Camp or Mila or Mwiba itself, in total, I think we've got 104 beds across 750,000 acres. So it's not like people are going to be sitting in each other's pockets on that side. But absolutely, from the experiential side of things, you've got your sleep out decks, you've got your fly camping, you've got your helicopter, that's at play. So literally the world is everyone's oysters when they want to come here. And like we know, I mean, coming in from major cities, like a lot of our clientele have come in from, or will come in from, there's going to be that sense of just wanting to look at the horizon that's like sometimes 100 miles away, and knowing that there's very little in between you and that horizon, and just having that sense of space and that sense of vastness, I think is something that was almost taken for granted in the past, that will hopefully now be seen in a really positive light.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just going to ask Shannon a question now. Something that Sean mentioned was that the staff will be wearing face masks, and I think that's there to protect themselves and to protect guests, and the guests who are paying can choose whether to wear a face mask or not. We kind of have to think, where do we stand on that? What is the protocol in terms of this about, who needs to wear what at what stage? I think it's going to be quite a tricky situation, because I think Sean's right to a degree degree, if somebody's paying for a safari, do they get a choice whether they wear a face mask or not wear a face mask? Versus in camp, we're saying to all our staff, you have to wear the face mask. So I've just had a question mark raised about that since I'm here on my own safari at the moment, and we're getting that interaction. I'm not a face mask wearer. I keep on forgetting the thing. I've been really bad about it. Thank heavens it's winter and I always have a scarf on generally. So I've got this scarf wrapped around my face. But when we got out here on safari, I had a very different mindset about it. I usually wear a buff around my neck all the time. So I've got that buff, I can always pull it up. But I've been a lot more conscious coming here and interacting with people. And actually, in speaking to people, I had a cleaner coming into the house. I said, I'm safe. And I explained, I feel safe. This is where I've come from. This is what I've done. This is my circle that I've come to you from. I feel you can trust my space. And I've had to have a conversation like that with somebody who's going to be making my bed. So it was just such an unusual thing. So how do you think it's going to react? What do you think the situation is in terms of the guest experiences? And we'll talk about going to the schools and that, but also that thing that Sean has just mentioned now about wearing face masks, and how on earth a guide is going to talk through a face mask, we don't know. So that's not going to work. So what's the result on, what's your feedback?
So, we are encouraging the guests to wear face masks, when they're in the main areas with other people. But at the end of the day, I agree with Sean, if they are not willing to wear a face mask, on a paying vacation, and they think it's uncomfortable, and if they feel comfortable not to wear it, so be it. But all of our staff will be wearing face masks. So it's really for the guests' peace of mind, and it's how comfortable they feel.
Great. And what's happening regarding the school visits that we do within the community and the Maasai dancing and all of those things? What's happening on that side?
So obviously, for the safety of the guests and the members of the community, we've had to stop those visits, the school visits and the Maasai Boma visits. It's just for a few months till things settle down, and we'll see how it goes. But having stopped these activities, we haven't stopped supporting them. So we will still be providing support through buying their handmade curios and stocking that in the shop, in the safari shop. And also, our association has just provided a brand new school bus, which is great. So we're still supporting the school, the Boma, in the ways that we can without having too much contact. So
great. That's great to hear. And Petra, just unmute yourself. But Petra, on your side, what's happening in terms of the guest experiences? And again, I think let's discuss, I know that Mahal is going to be opening up a little bit later, but what is happening in terms of chimps specifically?
Like on the guest experience, like for example, in Entamanu, where we are working very closely with our Maasai Boma. Similarly to Chem, we are reevaluating how we conduct those experiences, and we have a lot of those guys who actually work for us, and they all went through our internal quarantining and screening every day. So we will move that more in-house, but just like Chem, we continue supporting the community. So that's quite an important aspect, and we'll focus more on our in-house experiences for the time being, which include our walking around camp, which is fantastic in the Greater Highlands, walking down, like now especially starting from December, walking down towards Olduvai and well, depending how far people want to walk really, all the way towards Ndutu if they are keen. That's a bit far. But we have fantastic walks around the crater rim where we are based, and have picnics with sweeping views down into the crater, or maybe the next day having a sweeping view down into the Serengeti plains. So there's a wide choice on those activities that we do in-house, and we can do some activities with having, for example, the dancers in a distance, which we will have to keep our distances going. On the chimps, we are working very closely with TANAPA and the conservation bodies in Tanzania, and are constantly evaluating, like you say, with the IUCN guidelines. And should we, I mean, our guests are also very conscious of that, which is great. There are, if we open, there will be very strict enhanced measures on the chimp viewing and anybody who will enter the national park, with very thorough disinfection guidelines and daily screening, washing, sanitizing. So a very changed procedure to get into the national park for sure.
So, and just to reconfirm, those guidelines have they been laid out exactly at the moment, or are you just increasing your security, I mean, your protection protocols?
Yeah, they have not been laid out
Okay.
officially, no, but we are definitely monitoring that very closely.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. And any other experiences and different things that you're going to be doing from a guest safari point of view, anything else that is happening on your side?
The main thing is increased activities, walking, and obviously the big focus on privately getting out of a car. We've always done our walking with our walking guides for the last 2 decades. So that's just something we're building on, and we're increasing now. That probably the stay in a car will get a little bit less attractive, which is great because it just plays into what we actually want to do, is get out there in the bush and just, you know, breathe it in and feel it, and not just sit in the car. That's the most important thing, I think.
Well, actually, that ties in nicely to what we're going to speak about a bit later in terms of access and using the car for access.
Yeah.
So when you're in camps, and I know, I mean, I've spent a lot of time at both, especially down at Meyer, which is an absolute playground of an environment for getting out and doing something fun and unique and just having that sense of space. So I think that all the camps and lodges here are perfectly suited for that sense of complete freedom on that side. The next question I'd like to move into, and Sean, I'm going to address this one to you to start off with, is about exclusivity and privacy and being able to, once we've arrived into Tanzania and we've got through the whole screening process and you've managed to, you know, sort of walk the gauntlet of the thermometers, on the other end, we have this, and it comes across in all our camps, a very exclusive experience in terms of the types of camps with the forest Chem, you got your Entomano private and your Meyer private, and the way we work with the Serengeti camps. But let's discuss the exclusivity and how we can create little insular groupings and insular bookings for people to move around and experience Tanzania. So it's sort of your own space at your own pace. And I love that sense of doing it your way. So Sean, what do you think about that side of it, our exclusive options?
Yes, Suzanne, I think, again, what we've got is right from the beginning, once you arrive at the airport, I think that the minimized contact point on the one side of things, I think will definitely play into our hands moving forward. So you've got your dedicated guide, your driver, etc., that will then transport you. But when you look at the actual exclusive access, whether it be, in our case, Mila as our most quaint kind of property that's around, or it combines perfectly well with a forest Chem, or something that's really nice, like your own little individualized playground. So yeah, I think that intimacy that people will be seeking, I think there's a lot of, again, from a psychological side, I think there's a lot of kind of yearning towards people bonding a lot more. So we're anticipating a surge up in multi-generational families and just larger family groups that travel through. And I think that's the kind of experience that people are going to be looking at. I think if you look at the past, it's always been a nice to have. But moving forward, I think having that complete exclusivity where you can literally kind of dictate whatever the hours of the day look like, I think that's going to certainly be something that's going to be sought after moving forward. And I think same thing from our side. If you're having a look at from a staff complement side, generally your smaller properties have got less footprint, and with the flexibility, again, with the activities and stuff, I think the combination, the circuit involving the three of us that are on this call, certainly, but not just exclusive to us, moving further afield, I think that there will definitely be a demand for that. In moderation, obviously, because we know that it's not going to come back with a flood. It's going to be more of a ramp-up process. But I think the dynamics in the market segments are going to be a slightly different compared to what we've always dealt with. So, yeah, I think it'll be very well positioned.
Shannon, what do you think on that side about the exclusive options and offering how that's going to influence guest experiences and drive demand for the circuit that we have within Tanzania?
Well, I think, Chem has always been about exclusivity, down to your own guide. For each booking, you have your own guide, you have your own waiter, so your whole day is planned by you. So I think in terms of planning it with the other camps, either the lodge or little Chem, forest Chem, everything works well.
Yeah. So Jim's actually asked a question over here. Are you keeping clients separated on vehicles? So mother and daughter traveling on their own will have their own vehicle. At
Yes.
both Chem and at Legendary, each booking has its own vehicle. That's not a... Petra, what's happening on your side? Are they sharing? I mean, I know here at Kwandwe, people are going to be allocated private vehicles as well, but I know as standard policy, this is not a COVID policy whatsoever. Chem and Legendary have always assigned a private vehicle to every single booking. And actually, I just have to... I'm laughing about something. The first time I went to Chem, having done many safaris all over Africa, I got there and I was quite a grumpy mood. I'd flown from America via the UK to get and eventually got to Tanzania. And I got this very separate experience. Everybody ate differently. They had drinks separately, and there were sundowners were set up for everybody individually. And I was like, this is bizarre, as somebody who's come on safari and we all congregated around a table and all that. And Fabio was very much like, nobody wants to talk to somebody they don't know. I don't want to speak to those people. They can't speak, French or German or Swiss. So why would I want to, She said, I'm coming on holiday for myself, not to speak to you.
Yeah.
So I still at the time thought, quite what an odd lady and what an odd experience. And how we're now getting to this circle where this is the way to do it. So I think Fabia definitely had the right approach. So for Chem, nothing is out of the ordinary here. This is totally within the comfort zone.
The guest experience hasn't changed much.
No. Petra, how's the guest experience on that side changed from your point of view? And what is, in terms of your exclusive camps as well? And of course, you've got Intimanu Private, which was only launched last year and which is open now in phase 1 as well. How do you see that demand? Have you seen a different type of booking style coming through? What do you see happening on your side?
I think from our side, our private guiding's always been one of our top priorities, with our guides having been with us for like 10, 20 or even longer years. Most of them have started as only Swahili speaking camp hands in the old days of, our pioneer openings. So I think it's one of our major priorities to push private guiding, but also we understand that a lot of people don't quite have that budget. So we started shared game packages, several years ago, and it is what some people want. But for now, I mean, we definitely try and put everybody in a private vehicle, which we always try to do, non-COVID, because it is for us a better experience, a more personal. Everybody has their own preferences. Even within a family, sometimes people have different preferences. Some want to go back home to the swimming pool and the others want to stay out until it gets dark. So it's a very, very personal experience to be out there, we think. And obviously on the guiding, it does, that's really when our guides can shine. And so we do always push the private experience, and with our private houses, that car comes with the property anyway. So there is a lot of demand for private, for sure. Yeah.
Susanna, two other things I'll add on to that just quickly is when we talk about the exclusive use, I think we all know, generally speaking, that when you talk about the term exclusive use, you're saying, listen, you've got to intimacy or privacy of a private guide or whatever. But I think it comes second nature to certainly us on the panel on this side, that happens whether you're at Mwibo or Milo or sitting out on the short grass plains of the Serengeti. Like that intimacy or that exclusive use is already at play, no matter which properties you're going for. The only comment or suggestion that I would probably make is that make sure that the whole circuit is potentially equally yoked with properties that have got a similar policy, because there's nothing worse than you going from one property and you have that sense of exclusivity, and then you're moving on to another property and then they don't quite have the same synergy. And I think that that's what's really stood Chem and Legendary in terms of property space really well over the last couple of years, is that we tend to try and align ourselves so that there's a seamless approach both for our partners like Nomad as well as for the guests when they're on site.
Well, I think that's a key aspect as why you're all three here, is because your approach to a safari, your approach to guests, your respect for the environment are all very much aligned. And even from before the guest has even arrived, that's where I mentioned before, your booking policies are aligned as well. So as a circuit of experiences, it makes it quite a strong collaboration between you. So I totally agree with that. The quick question I wanted to ask though, which has come through from Tom Shovsbo, is that how will we handle a client who falls ill during their stay with COVID? What happens to that person and how is that managed?
From Legendary side of things, what we've done is we've actually taken the initiative of having one of our accommodations at Muiba that will service both Mila and Muiba. We've taken out a suite and had that block booked. So if someone does have symptoms when they arrive or during their stay, they can be isolated within that realm, even though they're out in the wilderness. And then from there, we've obviously got the doctors on call, the Medevac, etc., for consultations 24 hours a day. So that's the way we'll handle it on our side. And with the Medevac in place, they've got obviously the hospital requirements and the circuit of hospitals that are reputable, that we would then be able to put the clients into if needs be. So that's just kind of a proactive approach that we've tried to do on our side, just to mitigate any circumstances where you're ending up being fully booked and then you've got someone that's got symptoms. How do you isolate them? That's just operationally from our side.
And talking about that, Shannon, since you're living in Tanzania now at the moment, what happens when you do need to go to hospital? What are the hospitals like from that point of view? So if you do land up with a guest getting COVID, where do you go? Because I would rather get a room at Legendary Lodge and Arusha and have the machine sent to me if needed. Yeah. So what happens on that side? There's just been another question which came in from Antonella Kozi, asking the clients are concerned about the hospital in Tanzania. So what, can you just answer that for us?
We would drive them to Arusha. We've taken guests to the Arusha hospital. It's called Celian. It's a reputable hospital, which we've taken guests to before, and we're comfortable with that. So that wouldn't be an issue for us. And you know, Arusha is only 2 hours, so guests should feel assured that they'll be handled properly.
Great. And Petra, any comments on that side from your point?
It's the same for us. I think we do have certain hospitals for choice, you know, in Zanzibar, Dar, wherever we operate, and we do have evacuation policies for all our clients. So for us, that's not a concern operating that remotely. We're quite used to that, and they do fly. Currently, obviously, with the borders closed, we are bound to go to Tanzanian hospitals. There is an option going to Kenya, but it is very paperwork intensive. So the first point of call for urgent things would be within Tanzania, Celian. We have Fame Clinic in Karatu, which is fantastic, the Aga Khan in Dar. So that's sort of the main hospitals we are talking about.
And then, so we're going to jump onto something else a little bit more exciting than hospital, but just how does the hospital, I've never been to a hospital in Tanzania, so fortunately, but how does a hospital in Tanzania compare to something in South Africa? In South Africa, we have pretty good medical facilities. So any of you can answer that question.
Well, the only hospital in South Africa now is Morningside in Joburg, where I went to my daughter when she was 2 years old. Yep. She had to have a malaria test there, and I nearly had a heart attack the way they conducted a malaria test, which in Tanzania is a little finger prick, which you can manage with a 2-year-old, but in Morningside it was like a 3-hour procedure with anesthetic patches, and so I was like, whoa. So the hospitals we're talking about are definitely, you know, they have very good services. What we do sometimes lack is sort of the lab backup, which is required for more thorough testing. They are okay for emergencies, but if it is you know, a big issue like an accident or something, then we would have to revalue to maybe not go to one of the smaller ones, but we would go to a bigger one or seek authorization to go to Kenya.
Great, thank you. And actually, Jill Taylor has just brought in a question over here to say, I do feel the hospital question is one of the most important ones from our clients. They are more worried about healthcare over the cleaning protocols in our camps. And it could be helpful to include this in opening information, and which actually just makes me think in our COVID protocols, which we've put together for Chem and we're working on for Legendary, we haven't made any notice or any mention of hospitals and healthcare and how we will manage something. So Jill, I think that that's actually a really good valid point, and to Casey as well for bringing this up. I definitely will go back to our COVID policies and make a little tweak on that side to say, if something happens, what do we do? Which I think is very valid. So thank you to our attendees on that side for bringing that up. Okay, moving on now, I would like to discuss access. One of the questions that I had coming through a little bit earlier is, what is happening about our air access? Has it reopened? How do you get around? We've always had, I think, extremely good air access in Tanzania with both coastal and Auric, and what would be beforehand it was with Northern Air as well. But let's discuss getting around. And just as we get into this, and I know it will come up as well, but I think one of the key things about Tanzania is, and especially in this northern circuit that is opening up now for tourism, is the fact that it is actually completely doable on wheels. So for somebody that doesn't want to get into a car with not about a fear of flying, but just about a fear of being with other people and wearing that mask and having all these others that you don't know, and in that small space, the fact that you can actually, as Sean mentioned earlier, be picked up and transferred in your own little bubble around a whole safari circuit, I think is actually very appealing. So let's discuss the access question. And Shannon, I'm going to open that up with you to start off with, since you're based there. So what is happening and on the ground in terms of air access with coastal and Auric and our other charters, and how do you see people moving between destinations?
I think for now, people are actually favoring driving. As you said, you know, people feel safer in their own little bubble in one vehicle. But we do, I mean, coastal is flying. We do have our airstrip, which is another option for guests to consider, you know, flying straight in. It's a 40-minute transfer from our airstrip to Little Chem. And eventually when the lodge opens, it's only 10 minutes away. So it's very, you know, there's so many options, but I feel like driving is the easiest. And it's such a pleasant drive. It's on a tarmac road. From you know, when guests come from Legendary, they absolutely love the drive. It's beautiful and green this time of the year. They get to see people on the road. So it's very, I mean, personally, I prefer driving. I'm not a flyer. So I think a lot of people would appreciate driving right now.
Okay, fantastic. Sean, your input on the accessibility and getting around Tanzania at this stage?
I mean, listen, certainly it's a very good option to drive. I think the only thing that I would say is obviously have a look at the distances that you're going to be driving, which will also lend itself to a lot more time that potentially you're going to want to spend, because generally you're going to be spending a couple of hours in the vehicle transferring versus a flight. I think post-COVID, there's definitely a sentiment that people are going to be spending a little bit longer in one or two destinations versus trying to get around to all of them. So I think you've got the option to do a road transfer, absolutely, or fly. So Tanzania is definitely one of those destinations that you can quite comfortably move between some of the key locations and key destinations that people are going to want to visit without too much hindrance. So yeah, I think it's a very viable option, depending on the circuit that you're obviously doing.
No, but you can actually, and I think that that's a big thing about Tanzania, especially this northern circuit, and within the African safari circuit as a whole, the only other place that you can do the driving with ease, real ease, is a bit up in the Kenyan side, but there's not much on the driving side there. But South Africa is a really strong driving destination, especially for self-drives. And then, of course, Namibia, which has always been a big driving destination. So, Petra, what's your input on the access, and just a little bit of information as well, more information on the COVID procedures that have been put in place by the likes of Coastal and Auric and the other airlines?
Yeah, the internal airlines are definitely all ready to start flying once we have clients coming back. I think the main flying, like you say, will be to the further away distances, Sean. I think that's definitely going to be the focus. There are obviously some itineraries that have been booked pre-COVID, which then might be slightly tweaked afterwards, but for the time being, we don't see that so much. I think for the new bookings, it will be definitely more on the private side, straight out of Arusha with your guide, not even changing over from transfer drivers or anything. You just stay with your guide, you don't change your little bubble, and you kind of stick to your small crowd of people that you encounter on the way. The airlines have quite strict guidelines from the TCA, from the Tanzanian Aviation Authorities, which are part of our standard operating procedures. And these include, again, screening at the airstrips or airports. Some of the bus strips might not have that, but we have it in the lodges. So the airports are all have sanitizers again. Every client, every passenger will have their temperature taken before boarding. They do supply those packs to clients boarding the aircraft, and they try also to keep the spaces in between. Obviously in a little caravan, that's not so much possible, but this is the aim currently. So there are quite strict guidelines on the aviation industry as well.
So in a caravan, we generally climb in and there's one seat along the one side and there's two on the other side. So are they going to keep that middle seat open on all the flights? Is that the plan?
That's the plan if they can, but I don't think it is like a policy going forward. There's certainly also differences between some of the airlines. So some airlines have made this their policy. So we would have to look at the individual airlines for their direct SOPs they've put into place. But also the pilot and the luggage handling has been amended, how the luggage is being loaded onto the plane. So there are certain procedures that are adjusted to the SOPs.
Okay. And do you feel, I mean, this is a question, and I know you're all going to say yes, because that's what you should say, but honestly, do you feel completely comfortable putting clients onto aeroplanes? Do you feel that our charter companies, our internal charter companies, are doing a sufficient job in terms of getting people from Dar or from Arusha into the camps and areas? And Petra, especially for you, in terms of having something in the Sulu, nobody's going to drive to the Sulu. And when Ruwaha and Katavi and Mahali open, that's definitely flying zone. So it would be good to know about that security around the air access. And we're getting quite a few questions about that. So I just wanted to just talk about that a little bit more.
There's definitely enhanced screening on that, considering that the planes are quite small and they don't have the filters that the big airlines are advertising, that filtering out the viruses. Obviously, a lot of the flights, you know, they will not be able to have the social distancing, and clients are encouraged to keep their masks on during the flight. So this is the policy throughout the aviation industry, actually. So these are the measures that are taken in Tanzania as well. It is the only way to get around to the further away destinations, and with intensive screening at every stop from the hotel to the airport, you know, I think we do believe that anybody with symptoms will be picked up.
Yeah. And Shannon, do you agree? And Sean as well, are you happy with the flight access and what they're doing on the ground in terms of protocols?
Yes, I mean, we also have to rely on the guests, so also, you know, have some consideration and take the proper measurements to stay safe and keep others around them safe. But I do feel confident in what I've read about all the sanitization procedures and how they're taking it into consideration. So.
Yeah, and from my side, I mean, Suzanne, listen, if you're going to make the decision to travel across to Tanzania from a major source market, you're going to have inherent risks. So it's a case of, listen, it might be your international flight, it might be coming through border security, it might be connecting with a guy that sells you a Coca-Cola, it might be any one of those. So I think that's where I get back to the thing about making sure that there's self-preservation there, and making sure that from your perspective, or as an individual perspective, you're doing your utmost to stay safe. If you're sanitizing, if you're doing everything that you possibly can and staying out of those kind of high contact zones as far as possible. But there's going to be times, and this is not a Tanzania thing, this is a global thing, there's going to be times that you're going to come into contact with others. It's just the nature of being human, I guess. So yeah, I think everyone's going to have to make a decision on their own. But certainly I think in terms of protocols and SOPs that are in place, I've seen a very quick response by Tanzania, the suppliers, the airlines, the properties, to actually get on board with all of it and to make sure that everything's in line. I mean, we've seen, I'm sure everyone on the panel, not the panel, but everyone that's viewing has also seen those video clips that have gone doing the rounds of people arriving into Tanzania and all the sanitizers and the masks. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be an individual decision. But in terms of actually doing what we can, I think Tanzania is ahead of the curve at the moment.
I agree. And I think the one thing about the flights as well is that we actually know the people there. So it's like a camp. You know, it's like, you know, so you kind of feel say, hey guys, you're not doing this right, or well done, or, you know, it's like talking to each other. So it isn't like speaking to Emirates. You can't pick up the phone and say hi. So I think that's a big thing within Tanzania, is that this is part of our circle. They're part of our group. So it kind of works together, and we all need to. But talking about working together, I think what we do need to address on the flight side is what schedules are going to be running? Which direction are they going to be going? Is it going to be on inducement? How are these flights going to work? Because we certainly do not have the capacity to have the regular schedule. So how's that going to work? And I'm thinking of Salou, which is kind of like all the way down there. And we all know the cost of getting backwards and forwards. So it's kind of one of those like, well, maybe we'll only go once a week. Or so what is going to happen on that side? Petra, maybe you could answer a bit about the frequency of the routings.
Well, I think with us all, you know, encouraging people to come back and opening up, I don't think we have the luxury of saying, oh no, you can only come on a Monday. So the airlines are actually honoring their flights and their bookings, which again, obviously it might cost them quite a bit, but it is our way of also restarting the tourism industry. And I think it's important that we offer that flexibility to see, you know, also to show that we are open for business, and we're encouraging people. So these bookings will be honored, and in the long run, obviously with changing booking behavior, there might be more inducement flights necessary for the airlines to be able to cover their costs, but we have to see that in the future. But for the time being, I think we are all quite confident these flights will happen. What has happened in reality in the past is that in very low seasons, for example, people rebook their clients onto one airline, so only one flight is going, for example, Air Excel or Coastal or AREC, maybe only one of those flights is going, and they share their clients, just like, you know, we are discussing. It's all part of working together, and we all work together in Tanzania, so that's the positive thing. And I think that will also save us being able to operate that way. So in the Salou, we know that we will be able to operate, and those flights usually combine Ruaha, although we'll have to see how these are going to be connected. And in the north, the only thing maybe what we can see is that people might be less keen to have these short 15-minute flights, like you say, between, you know, Arusha, Tarangire or Manyara and the crater. They are extremely drivable, and that might be the only thing where the flight frequency might be less requested. And that really only is a trend that started recently, where in the past in Tanzania, all safaris were driving. And then at some point, this idea of game package hopping started. So that's a bit of a new thing anyway. We'll see how that develops. That's to be seen.
Well, it's actually then to drive one way, and then when you get to the end is fly out, and then that flight, or you fly in and drive the other way, which is a good, and it's also more responsible in terms of our our carbon footprints on that side. We've just got two questions which I want to ask you. One is from Hope Smith, and the other one is from Alice. Sean, are the mobile camps open, or is it only Chem and Legendary and Weber? So I think we just need to answer that question. And then for you, Petra, when do you think it will be possible to see the reopening of Ruaha and other lodges that are not linked to the Northern Circuit? So Sean, if you could just answer that, and then Petra, if you could answer that from your side.
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, I think every company is going into a phased reopening approach and seeing what's based on forward bookings and the rest. So from Legendary side of things, we'll have Legendary Lodge that will reopen in August, so the beginning of August. And then from there, we'll probably open, and no dates have been absolutely fixed yet or sent to trade yet, but we're looking at Weber and Mila opening pretty close to each other in a couple of months' time. It won't be an immediate reopening. And then we'll end up with Legendary Serengeti Camps as the last property likely to reopen. And that's simply because of the mobilization costs of putting that structure up. We need to make sure that there's going to be enough traffic and demand through that. Otherwise, we don't want to be sitting in a situation where we're going to, putting that actual entity at risk. So yeah, that's probably the format that will happen. Start with Arusha. That forms a nice circuit already with Little Chem. And then as the phased reopening starts to come about, then we'll look at things, how we can broaden the circuit a bit.
Well, it makes sense in terms of having Mwiba and Mila right down in the south to keep the mobile out of the first half of the year in terms of the calving season, because you can actually use Mwiba and Mila for that time of the year. You don't need to put another camp in, which has always been the case. You've always had 3 camps down in that same area. So using your fixed camps possibly, and not setting up the mobile, and then setting up the mobile for a little bit later in the year for the western, the western corridor, and then going up into the north. And
Suzanne, I've always said you should join the legendary team. Come be a salesperson. You've answered that question perfectly well. Exactly that.
Darling.
I know we can't, darling. No, but exactly that. I mean, the reality is that you've got to make really informed decisions. I mean, at the moment, the guests that are going to be coming through now will start trickling in, hopefully, and that'll be good for Tanzania. So I think the message of trying to get at least 1 or 2 properties up and running is absolutely the right thing to do, especially seeing as all the effort that's gone into reopening the country. But yeah, absolutely. As soon as the mobile is down on the Shawcross Plains, in our case, it's on relatively the same piece of land that you can access within 45 minutes. So to have 3 fully operational properties within a short distance of each other, it doesn't make too much sense. And then that mobile is there until the end of March next year, usually, which means that April, May, and half of May are dead months. So I think we'll make a call on it. Listen, I think we're all hoping that against the odds, demand is going to come surging back. And when that does, I think everyone kind of keeps cards up their sleeves to reopen sooner than expected. But at the moment, it is about self-preservation, but at the same time, trying to adhere or go with what the government has said about reopening, and also to show the world that we are doing what we can to welcome guests back in. I mean, it wouldn't make much sense if everyone remained shut, then would it?
Yeah,
so
great.
So yeah.
And Petra, from your side, just in terms of opening up the West, what would be the answer on that?
Yeah, I think like Sean said, we're all learning to live a new life, and we're adjusting. So this is going throughout the West, and also we mentioned Ruaha earlier. I think we will have to see how bookings come in, how the safety of the chimps can be protected, and Katavi obviously is very much connected to the Mahale circuit with our charter that goes down there. So this is like Sean also mentioned, a very fluid development right now, which we can't give exact dates yet until we have a bit more clarity on that. In Ruaha, the same. Obviously, we're a bit more spread out than the legendary circuit. So in Ruaha, the same. We are working together with Ikuka and possibly see if we can collaborate. And in Selous, we are definitely determined to open our own property. So we're just in our lovely corner down there, which we can't really compare with anything. So I think we have to see when the demand is coming back and how we can keep the chimp safe. I think that's the main priority for us.
Yeah, and Suzanne, I think also the other thing about it is that I think from a trade perspective, it would be great to have all your ducks in a row and have the reopenings of all the properties set, and it would make a lot of sense to have that clarity. But the reality is that, I mean, from our perspective, that's where I think a lot of the collaborations come into effect with the trade. And that's where, I mean, our friends at Sangita, our friends at Cilia, etc. And that's where we're all collaborating and saying, hey, listen, do you have a property open in this? And for the trade, what I would suggest, and like we just mentioned, we've got a couple of properties at Nomad that are reopening. We've got Legendary Lodge, we've got Little Chem. You can create a circuit already. And that's far greater than a lot of other destinations in Africa that you aren't able to create a circuit. So for those clients that are trying to rush back, if you can get there, great, start small. But then as the property starts reopening, then your circle will become a little bit bigger, and you'll have a little bit more flexibility with it.
Yeah, totally agree. Thank you, guys. So we've just as a quick wrap up over here, because I absolutely love what you are doing in terms of products on the ground. And while I love looking at your faces as well, I just want to end off this afternoon with some really good inspiration as to what we are doing and some amazing moments that we can take and what our guests are going to be experiencing when they come back to Tanzania. So I'm just going to ask each of you, as a quick wrap up of 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes actually each, to say what makes Chem special, what makes Legendary special, what makes Nomad special. I want high sales drive here and turn on those taps in terms of getting people converted. And I'm going to share my screen again, and so everybody can see a few pictures on that side as well. I just need to find the right button, and here I go. Is that it? Great. So Shannon, you in. What makes Chem really, really special?
Okay, so I think where I'm going to start is now more than ever, people need to come to a place like Chem. After a year filled with so many emotions and anxieties and everything going on with the world, it's the best place to find your inner peace. We are able to curate a safari just for you and your family, your loved ones, based on your dream, on where what you imagine that you would go and have this amazing safari, and down to every detail that you plan. That's what we do at Chem. We never plan anything for you, we plan it with you, and that's what we do.
Great. Thank you. That was really well done. And I think another thing about Chem, what I'm just adding in now, because I am on the sales side and I get paid to do this job, but one of the big things, of course, which I'm missing desperately are those big tuskers. Just to be a little Chem, which out of all the places that I've been to in Africa, I have to rate as one of the most iconic destinations for seeing big tusking elephants. They are so chilled out, so relaxed. They are the only way to describe them is gentlemen of the wilderness.
Yes.
And these beautiful animals.
They're coming back into the concession. All the wildlife is slowly coming back, with all the rains that we had. But now we started to see the elephants coming back, the zebras, the giraffes. So it's really, the concession is looking amazing.
Oh, amazing. Well, I can tell you I am missing it desperately. And if there was a flight from South Africa, I would certainly be there. So moving on from you then, Sean, what is your update on the Legendary side? And we've got a few new things in the pipeline here as well. So what's happening on your side?
Yeah, I mean, just going back to Chem, I have to say Chem has got the most unbelievable cuisine I've ever come across on the safari. I mean, I think ours are good, but my gosh, I don't know, Shannon, you've clearly rallied those troops. You guys have done an exceptional job there. So, yeah. No, Suzanne, from our side of things, I think if I had to sum it up, and I don't want to go too heavy on the sales pitch because Shannon promised to give me 2 of her minutes, but it's definitely, when you look at that tract of land that you can see on the map that you've got there, I mean, that kind of speaks to it all. We've got that 750,000 acres with a slightly discolored green area that Suzanne is circling now. And it literally is an incredible adventure, experiential. I mean, that word's been kind of drummed about so often with the experiential, but really, you can do whatever your heart contents. If you want to go fly camping, we've got a walking safari that you do a setup of 3 nights on fly camping. And you can have 1 night at the escarpment overlooking the most incredible scenery at sunset. You can have a helicopter circuit that kind of falls between. Oh, there's the fly camping there. You can kind of land the helicopter on an escarpment again and have this incredible dip in a pool. So whatever your heart contents to do, we can do it at Legendary, honestly. And from a flexibility side of things, I think that's also a very big aspect of what makes Legendary. And I think it's quite open for everyone to see. We're not going out to trying to be like anybody else. We just want to be ourselves, and we want to be the best at what we do. And if you look at true USPs, if you have a look at those, if you can go back to the map there quickly, Suzanne, and you have a look at the migratory route that kind of forms in a circular format, those short grass plains of where that Legendary South Camp that's incredible there. I mean, that tract of land, that privatized area that we've got the access there for 3 or 4 months of the year with the calving season, that is a huge USP on our perspective. But yeah, I mean, and then the last thing I'll probably mention is certainly about the circuit. that the fact that you can combine your mobile, your adventure circuit, do 3 or 4 nights up in the north or down in the south or even in the west where the Grumeti is, and then have a night or 2 in Arusha on the way in or out, and then end off at a Mwiba or a Mila, depending on that. I think very few companies within intercompany can offer that circular route that we're able to offer. And then, as I said, the last thing is the cultural side of things. The Hadzabe and the Toga are certainly cultural experiences you really want to experience when you come and do the legendary circuit. So quite a few things on our side, but that's why the circuit with Chem works very well. Nomad as partners, we can put together something really special.
Fantastic. And I just have to say one thing you didn't sort of mention over there, but because I know Petra's going to speak about the Lamai area, but it is the Western Serengeti up in the in this area, which I think is absolutely in the Nyasarori, which is just south of Grumeti Reserves. Having spent a lot of time in the Serengeti myself, I think that that's one of the most fantastic locations. And honestly, I think of all the locations within the legendary mobile camps, I love that western section. I think it is absolutely magnificent, and it's such an unusual and different area, and it combines so well within a whole circuit of destinations as well. And I can, that's kind of what Singita have kind of built their experience on, is that beautiful western zone, which is just magnificent. And then for legendary to have that mobile camp in that area is superb. It's it's scenically beautiful and really game rich. It's a wonderful destination, definitely. And so, no, Sean, I'm not going to let you off the hook yet, because the one thing you haven't spoken about, which we're very excited about, and I put the pictures in here for you, is the sexy new Mila tented camp and the upgrades that we've done at the mobile, which are all ready and they're all packed away. But tell us a little bit more about this new look and feel that's coming out with Legendary.
Listen, Suzanne, there's always going to be a bit of mystery and intrigue about Legendary, doesn't there? So, okay. Well, now that it's in front and center with us, both Mila tented camp, which is close proximity to Mwiba, but offers a tented luxury experience. And then also Legendary, the mobile camps, both of the mobile camps have been completely gutted and relaunched in December. So just in time for COVID, fantastic timing. And yeah, they're looking magnificent. I think the great thing about it again is that they're both tented structures, but you get a completely different experience when you combine them. So they're very easily combinable. And to what you were saying a little bit earlier about, we've got such unique locations across that circuit that you could come back 3 times separately and be in all those 3 different locations each time and get something completely unique. So no, it's a beautiful, the design, the decor of these camps here with Mila being only 6 tented accommodations. It really gives you that quaintness to it that you kind of feel like the vast landscapes are there for your picking.
Absolutely. And for everybody who's listening, I think I have the best news ever about Legendary. And that is that we are going to very soon have online availability. You're going to actually see what is available in the camps, which camps are open and all that sort of thing. But that to me is some of the best news ever. And we'll be launching that in the next few months. So,
and I will say on that, so many people have heard that before. So they're like, yeah, whatever.
Real time.
The deal has been done. It is happening. Signed on the dotted line. Come August, end of August, we should have online availability. And then, no, we'll leave the second one. It's a bit of an intrigue for a couple of other communications. I know it's on the top of your tongue, Suzanne, but we'll leave that one for a bit more intrigue.
Just the fact that we have online availability and you'll know how to book it and how to link it in with the other camps, and you'll be able to see how you can build an itinerary, I think is the best news ever. If COVID has had any good thing, is the fact that Legendary is going to have online availability. Thank you, Sean. Thank you. So Petra, over to you in terms of why Nomad? Why Nomad Tanzania? What makes you special and why should we come? I mean, I'm still absolutely definitely coming to visit Greystoke and see those chimps, but what makes Nomad so unique?
Yeah, I heard earlier you have a big gap in the west and in the south, so you need to come and visit. So what makes us special? I mean, it's the wild and the remote mostly. So we have all these camps that are so far away from everybody else, which is sort of the ultimate privacy. We, unlike Chem and Legendary, we do operate in national parks. So we are, we've been working with them for since we started, and the main the main focus is getting out there and to spend as little time as possible in a vehicle, actually. So wherever that is possible, that's where we want to be. In the Selous, the main activities are obviously in the boat, on the walks, like on the fly camps, walking into the fly camp, out of the fly camp. So there's quite a lot on foot that we are trying to do, or in the boat, or we actually go with the boat to another fly camp. So we've actually done extensive recce's, especially in the last 6 months, and established some new sites for that, and also new trekking routes, which is quite exciting. So there's a lot of development there. In the crater as well, we have sort of ramped up our activities with. I don't want to give away all the surprises, actually, but there's quite a number of little surprises along the way for the client when they do their walks along the crater rim, and these sweeping views we have in our little corner there. It's fantastic. Tarangire, the same. We do the night drives and a lot of walking. So most clients who go to Tarangire do at least 1 or 2 walks in a 2 or 3 night stay. The same in Kogatende. We do walk out of Lamai, and we're trying to do more and more walking up there as well, in combination also with our mobile camps that are moving around Ngorongoro and Serengeti, which I don't see there, but they're sort of in between the mix there. And then obviously Ruaha, the same. We do a lot of walking in Ruaha along the river and into the little bit more remoter areas. Katavi, fly camping, go out on a walk, and Mahale is only walking and swimming. So we're trying to really reduce that, sitting, morning, come back, have your food, go back in the car. That kind of routine is not really what we're trying to do. And the main focus is obviously on the little surprises, on the experience, on the guiding, and just having fun, actually. It's a really important part out there, because you need to really gel and have a lot of fun out there, and it's so easy to have. I think
and then you want to just talk us a little bit through about the Intimano Private, which was put up last year only, so it's only six months old or so. So what's happening on that side?
Well, that's the latest addition on the private houses that we have. So it falls in line with Lamai, where we have Lamai Private and Nkombe's house. Nkombe being more for families with kids, but we'll have actually quite a lot of adults who want to go there too. Kiba Point in Sand Rivers also being private, and now this Intimano is the latest addition that really ties in. And like Sean said, we have a lot of clients who sort of move between our properties as well, to get to build on that private experience with your private wing camp, for example. This camp is like, it's like you're tucked away on your private little crater corner there, with fantastic views into the crater, and very cozy fireplaces up there. So it's a fantastic addition. We all want to move in there, actually.
I don't blame you. Great. Well, I really, really appreciate that. And I thank to all the panelists for an amazing support this afternoon and for your insights in Tanzania. One of the questions that has come through from Farah Jaya is also, are the camps and lodges asking guests who are booking, asking agents who are booking guests, any additional guest information to help speed up the processes? And I know from our side, in terms of the reservations with Legendary and Chem, and I'm sure as well with Nomad, yes, the pre-guest arrival information is that much more detailed, and it's not just about the guests, it's where they're coming from and where they're going to. So the whole itinerary.
That's the Kwandwe network.
Hi, it's Cara piping up from the background now. I think we lost Suzanne there.
That's all good. Yeah, I mean, just to add on to what Suzanne was saying about the pre-guest information, and one thing that we were talking about on our side is that I know certainly from Chem's side of things as well, is we're busy putting together a mobile app for the safari camps, so that we've got all the documentation that is then preloaded, so guests can download the app and then fill out the documents in the comfort of their own home and then send it prior to their arrival. So we're looking at innovative ways, and then even on property they can do a messaging as part of the app, and then liaise with the team, and then have all the documents that would traditionally be in the room itself also uploaded onto the app for ease of use and less contact, I guess. So yeah, I think there's several different things that every different company is doing to appease that situation.
Yeah,
I think also more.
Thanks, Sean. Petra, do you want to add to that?
I think more and more airlines are also asking for passport details, for example. So I think this will possibly fall in line with that as well, especially to be able to do the registration beforehand and avoid clients having to, handle all the pens and papers that are required on every registration in every property. So I think there's going to be a very strong drive to avoid all that.
Thanks, Petra. I guess if there's anything else for you guys to add to that, we were coming to an end anyway. We've got 4 minutes left. I think from just what I can say from Classic side, we will follow up as always, post these talks with a recording. And I know there's been requests for quite more detailed info on the COVID protocols and hospitals and all of that, which we will include. But if there's anything that our panel can just add, we've got 3 more minutes to go before we wrap up the session.
Nope, I think that's it from my side. I think I've said all I need to say. Over to you, Petra.
I think I've seen a question here about if it's mandatory to have masks in the car. If I think it is not mandatory, but I think we've covered that earlier. The guides can wear masks all the time, but it is mandatory. And I think there's a lot of fresh air coming into these cars. So I think, like you say, it is left up to the to the client also to request it, and up to the guide to wear it. But it's not mandatory in the car, as long as there's fresh air circulation. And the clients, what we do is not occupy the passenger seat. That's for sure. Yeah. I think that's one of the only things that might be worth mentioning. Apart from that. I don't think, I think the question on the evacuations has been answered, what you just mentioned, Cara. So if there's any more details that are required, I think maybe we can go into that later.
Absolutely. Well, if we haven't answered if we haven't got to most of these questions whilst being online, we'll make sure to answer them following the session. So thanks everyone, thanks to all of our panelists, and thanks to everyone for tuning in. It's been another great Tuesday talk, and we look forward to having you again in 2 weeks' time. But for now, it's a goodbye from myself, and probably on behalf of Suzanne as well. I can see she hasn't made it back, but a big thanks from her side and to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.